Hello, my darlings. This is Micah Riot with another episode of Ink Medicine Podcast. It is May 2nd, or May 3rd, or May 4th, whenever you decide to listen to this episode. And today, I am interviewing a new friend of mine named Ayden Love. Ayden is a tattoo artist, a Southern femme, a Leo, a witch, a mom, and the baby girl of one of my friends. In fact, the way I met her was through this friend of mine who brought her to me to tattoo a set of magical, ritualistic, kinky tattoos for her baby girl and for my friend, Daddy. If you know me, you know that this made me very happy because I love ritual, I love authenticity, I love relationships, and I love play. So let's get into it. Introduce yourself with like your pronouns and some of your identities and your favorite thing to eat for breakfast.
Oh, wow. I'm Ayden. I use she, her pronouns. Some of my relevant identities include being a queer, femme, genderqueer, Southerner, a parent, a white person, and a witch. And I really struggle to eat breakfast because most breakfast foods I associate with being eggs, which I hate, or sweet things. So anything that is a savory food that's not egg-based is my favorite breakfast food. Or maybe my favorite breakfast food is just lunch.
That, you know what? You can eat like lunch for breakfast. Like there's no rule. So have you always hated eggs?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
you
have.
just hate eggs. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, they're kind of weird. I get it. Like I like them myself, but they're like a weird concept.
Yeah. I think it's more just like they're really sulfury and weird. Yeah. But when I was pregnant the first time, it was the only thing I craved, which was really weird because I had this like cognitive dissonance where I was eating them and knowing that I theoretically hated them.
I cannot imagine what that would be like.
It's like getting your body hijacked by some other living being.
That is wild. So then like the second the kid came out, you were like, okay, I hate eggs again.
It only lasted for the first trimester.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So you're a tattoo artist.
Yes.
How long have you been tattooing?
I think I've been tattooing 6, going on 7 years.
And how did you come to it?
So an ex-partner of mine just gave me a tattoo machine for Christmas one year. And I came up in the era of tattooing where that was very frowned upon. So I had a hard time receiving the gift because that's not how you're supposed to do it. But that particular partner was, I'll say, from a different class bracket than I was and had a lot more entitlement to whatever the fuck they wanted. So they were like, you can do anything. And I was like, that's against the rules. And they kind of like bullied me into starting to tattoo our friends. And that's how it started.
And then what? Like, did you end up in a shop? Did you end up getting like formal training? How did you continue?
So most of it was just self-taught, trial and error with lovers and friends. And then I went through a particularly like rough year where a lot of traumatic things happened, and the career that I was previously in became somewhat triggering to me while I was navigating some health issues. And I needed a job really quick. So it kind of just became my like side hustle that turned into my full-time job over the course of about a year. I never had any official training from anyone, but there was a woman in the town where I live who I would like go over to her house and she would talk me through some technical aspects. And we did that a few times. But I have a background in healthcare, so I had a grasp on all of the sort of safety issues that one would be concerned with. All of the bloodborne pathogen stuff was not unfamiliar to me. So, and I've been an artist my whole life, so I was really learning sort of the technical side of things. But most of my learning has come from trial and error and being in community with other self-taught tattooers and occasionally other official apprentice tattooers that are willing to share their wider breadth of knowledge.
Yeah, this is interesting. The person who, who would allow you to come to their house and like talk you through stuff. It's kind of a mentor of yours. Did you meet them through tattooing or did you know them before?
Yeah, I had a friend of mine who was just really, really amped for me to start tattooing because she's always been really supportive of my art in general. And she was like, oh, you have to meet Stephanie. I love her. She's tattooed me a whole bunch. And Stephanie used to own a shop in Durham like some years prior. And so she introduced us.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Are you still friends with that person?
Yeah. I mean, I think COVID has made all of our relationships a lot more distant than they once were. So I haven't seen her in a while, but we see each other on the internet from time to time.
Mm-hmm. Where do you work now? It's a private studio or
I have a private studio in Durham. Yeah. I did
yourself?
work in a shop for about 2 years, but it closed last year.
Mm-hmm. And you're by yourself now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which I honestly much prefer because I am an introvert.
Yeah, I hear that. But, it's like over time, I feel like it got to me. I worked by myself for most of my like 15 years of tattooing. And there comes a time when you're like, okay, I feel like I'm living in a bubble and in a box. Like, and there's like no input and output. Like it's just all internet and like me.
Yeah. And the internet is a rough place to get all of your input from.
Yeah. I was like scrolling today and I'm in like a kind of a PMDD cycle where I'm just like not at my like peppiest. And I was like scrolling today. I was like, this was designed to make me feel bad. Like I follow people who are better than me.
Yep. Every time I just like don't even let myself scroll anymore because I'm like, I'll quit if I keep scrolling.
Yeah, there's definitely days where I'm like, I feel like that. Like I need to stop. Or like unfollow everybody who is like way better than me and I'll never be at their level,
Yeah. I appreciate that it's not just me out there sad scrolling.
I assume it's all of us, which is why we're all kind of like, I feel like depressed as a community of humans.
Yeah. Not just tattooers, but like, everyone.
Yeah, because I mean, if you're a creative, you're following other creatives and you're like, wow, they're doing amazing, beautiful shit. And then if you're somebody who like doesn't think they're creative, then you're like, I'm not creative. And look at all these creative people. Like it's the same.
Yeah. Or even just like a person trying to live your life. And then you're like, well, this person has enough money to go on vacation, or this person has enough time and patience to make crafts with their kids or whatever the thing that you're doing. There's just only comparison.
Yeah, it's basically what it's designed for, right? It's like part of capitalism to like make us hustle harder and like do more and spend money on better equipment or whatever.
Yeah. And it's like I get stuck in a trap where if I only see the internet for too long, I forget that other tattooers can be nice. And I just assume that they'll all be scary and mean, which is why I really love doing guest spots, because while it's terrifying before you get there, usually you meet people who are really sweet once you're there.
Mm-hmm. Have you done a lot of guest spotting?
Yeah, I try to do one every few months, even if it's somewhere like pretty close by.
Okay, that's interesting. So besides like community, what else do you get out of it? Do you feel like
I love traveling and seeing new places. Like I just love seeing what a new town is about that I haven't gotten a chance to explore before. But I honestly usually try to go to cities where I have people that I already love and don't get to see very often. So it's kind of an excuse to visit people that I care about. Like I try to guest spot in Seattle or Tacoma or Portland, somewhere in the Northwest, a couple times a year so that I can see the people that I knew when I lived there.
Mm-hmm.
just to kind of offset the insane resources needed to travel.
I kind of love that strategy, and I haven't done a lot of guesting. I've really only done it twice. Like, right, I've been tattooing for a long time. I've felt like, yeah, people are scary, but when I've guested at walk-in shops, you end up doing a lot of infinity symbols.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I believe that.
So I don't know, like maybe it's changed, and I'm gonna go do a guest spot in June, and I'm excited and also like a little bit terrified.
Where are you going?
I'm going to Chicago, and I'm
Fun.
going to Butterfat Studios. Esther Garcia, who owns it, is like somebody I've followed for like my whole life as a
Yeah.
tattooer, and
That tattooer is incredible.
yeah, yeah, like her work, her philosophy around it, her like thoughtfulness, her work in like kind of equity in tattooing, like she, does color testing and stuff on like melanated skin. Yeah, she's really great, and I am excited and also like terrified.
Yeah. I bet you'll have a great time.
I am sure I will.
I
Yeah.
had I did a guest spot in Chicago. It was really fun.
What
So
did you guess there?
I'm totally blanking on the name of the studio right now. It'll come to me in a minute.
Okay, so for people who want to guest, right? Like this is one of the perks of tattooing, that you can travel and like work anywhere. Can you give your like best tips for people
Well,
listening out there who might be like beginner tattooists or
yeah.
just not very experienced guest spotters?
Yeah, I mean, I really started out guesting as a really, really new tattooer and probably gained a lot of my initial knowledge through going to shops with artists that were, open to somebody with less experience. Carrie Burke, that used to own Heart of Gold in Hendersonville, gave me my first guest spot, and I was like a very fresh first year tattooer at that point, or like first year of doing it professionally. And I was always really surprised at sort of the openness and generosity of all of the studios that I've guested at, but I've really prioritized studios and shops that I knew were other queer people or gender nonconforming people, people of color. Like I've never guested at some random trad bro shop. I don't know what that experience would be like. I'm not super interested in having it.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's just been about finding a shop that you feel like is in alignment with what makes you feel comfortable just as a person, not even as an artist. But that might not be everybody's priority. But for me, that's like been the easiest way to combat feeling really scared of how mean people can be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's your approach? Like, what do you do? You're like, okay, I found the shop. It's do you prefer walk-in shops or
I've
private
never done a
spaces?
walk-in tattoo.
Okay.
Yeah,
You've
I've
never done a
only
single walk-in tattoo. Okay.
never done a single walk-in tattoo.
Okay.
Two years in the shop that we own that was a street shop, and I just did customs, and occasionally we would do larger flash days. But my way of getting guest spots has just been emailing the shop, and almost always you hear back, and I've never been told no. I've had some shops that never responded, but nobody's ever been mean to me or been like, your tattoos suck, you can't work here. Which is always my worst fear, is somebody's going to be like,
Yeah.
you're, whatever, my imposter syndrome will come in and they'll be like, you're not good enough. But people are always really sweet. And then, yeah, just emailing and being ready to hear no, but usually you hear yes.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them
Yeah.
have a pretty set like guest policy. And, I usually say something about like who I am, like a brief description of like, here's where I'm coming from. Here's the type of tattooing I do. Here are the dates I'm interested in. Would love to work at your shop. And then they'll send back like, here's the supplies we do and don't have. Here's how we handle booking. Like you're responsible for this. You're not responsible for that. And then what the shop payout structure is like.
Mm-hmm. And then as far as booking your clients, do you then advertise in that town? Like, do you do like some kind of paid ad, or do you like, for example, Butterfat, like Esther said, she'll post for me on
Yeah,
their like shop page, which I'm hoping will get some of the clients that I will need to fill my time.
for
But I'm
sure.
also like, kind of, how do I approach that piece of it, you know, like getting booked up for the time I'm there in like a private studio. Cause yeah, there's no walk-ins.
Yeah, definitely. For me, it has mostly just been the internet and knowing people in towns that are willing to sort of cross post for you. Like the shop posting is usually the most helpful thing that I've seen if they're willing to post like a little bit before your visit and then during your visit if you still have openings. And I try to make 1 or 2 flash sheets available for each guest spot. So there's like new, fresh designs to pick from because people love to see new stuff. And then, you know, queers know everyone by 2 degrees of separation. So I'm just like, who do I know in Chicago? And I'll ask them to repost something about my visit. And usually you can find 1 or 2 of your friends in one direction where they'll tell their friends and eventually it books it out.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think it's been harder in the last year or so to really fill out those bookings. Like it does feel like it has slowed down some post the mid-COVID boom of tattooing.
Yeah. So I'm curious how you're feeling about that. Like I keep seeing, I definitely, you know, there's a slower flow. Like I have a lot less emails coming in. My books are still full for a little bit ahead. There's been a bunch of cancellations, whatever. Seems kind of normal, but also like I can feel that there's less, you know, interest, just the part of like people out there. And then I keep seeing tattooers post like, this is the slowest season ever. We've just all been sitting around, like no one's books are full. And I'll go and like look at their Instagram and they'll have like 20,000 followers and be like, I'm just sitting around. And I'm like, okay, well, I hope not to get to that point. So how are you feeling with what is considered, I think, like the worst recession tattoo business?
Yeah, I feel similarly to how you're feeling. Like I think I got really spoiled as a tattooer who was only a couple of years in when COVID hit. And it was just consistently packed. And people were really clamoring to get in with every flash post you make or whatever, or books open or however you do it. But now it does stay consistent for me. Like there's never a day that I'm like, I didn't have somebody today. There might be a cancellation last minute or something like that. But it's more like booking out 2 months instead of 6 or 8 months or whatever the case may be. But then my scarcity mindset comes in and it's like, you imagined this career and it is finally disappearing, this thing that you dreamed of. But it's helpful when I see other artists sort of going through the same thing, that I think we're all just kind of exhausted, you know, spiritually and in a resource way and in all of the ways possible just as humans right now. Cause like, I think during COVID, everybody went into this mindset of like, oh my God, my mortality, like we could all die and we're all going to end up dirt. So I might as well get that tattoo that I've been dreaming of, but I've been too scared to get. And I would tattoo a lot of like first time suburban like housewives that were like, I don't know. I just am like in my house thinking about it and like, why not? I think now people are just fucking broke because groceries are $1 million and nobody has health care, and it just feels harder and harder to like eke out joy even in these really personal meaningful rituals that some of us hold dear, you know.
Yeah. So when that mindset comes into play for you, what do you do? Like where do you go with that?
That's a really good question. So I think my scarcity brain tries to tell me to just make the most appealing, like mass sort of, I don't know, like the thing that will be the most interesting to the most people and put that out there. But I've been trying, like, I don't know, everybody loves a flower. Like make it really accessible art, make it really like, anybody could look at this and be like, sure, I can slap that sticker on. But it has like led me to feeling less inspired by the work as a whole. So what I've been trying to do lately is go weirder. And one of the things that has led to is that I'm trying to restructure a few days a month of my work days to be dedicated to more ritual style tattooing, where it's more about having an entire day set aside for one client that has a specific ritual intention that they want to work with. Because I do think that tattoos most often can be, for many people, a sort of blood magic, and really respecting them as that. And so those sessions for me are more about like, people don't come with a specific image in mind. They come with an intention, and we do a tarot card reading and we build an altar and we sort of set those intentions, and I draw from a more like ritual space for them. And of course there's like opportunity for them to input about specific design elements, but mostly I'm asking to interact with clients that are willing to go through a sort of like trusting the information that we're receiving collectively in the moment, rather than I want it to be a butterfly. And that has felt more fulfilling to me than trying to just like mass market myself in a way that feels kind of soul crushing and capitalistic.
Do you charge differently for those days?
Yeah, I have a set rate because I want it to be more about like, you know, the experience being more honest to what you're coming for, rather than like you sat for so many hours. So it's like, if the tattoo that you need is 3 inches, or if it's a chest piece, I don't want you to have to feel like you're sacrificing what you really need for a budget. So it's just sort of like here's a day rate. And if you're interested in this, like, here's what we're doing. And I have been a massage therapist for 12 or 13 years now. And so I offer body work as a sort of wrap up component to it, doing some craniosacral therapy at the end of the session to kind of like seal it.
Okay, you still do it afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Because craniosacral is not very like body heavy, right?
No, I mean, like often you're just holding somebody's head or their feet or like maybe their hands.
That's a beautiful component of tattooing. I love that. I love the comprehensive, like, we're doing this like soul spiritual work, and then we're finishing with the physical mortal shell, and like loving it and like ending it that way. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it feels nice. Tie a little bow on it. It also, like, I don't know, I've lived so many different lives that sometimes it feels kind of compartmentalized. And for me, it feels really good to have several elements of what has been important to me over time be present in one place.
So what other details are part of this ritual? So you have a tarot piece, you have the bodywork piece, the tattooing piece, the drawing piece. Is there like, do you do special food? Like what other things do you include?
I think the altar building is a big part of it for most people. And I do a grounding exercise with people, like very light trance work. And then I've studied very minimally in herbalism before times. And so I try to pair everything with a supportive herbal tea if people are interested. But I kind of have approached it, the times that I've done it, as a choose your own adventure. So not everybody wants, an herbal tea, or not everybody wants to call in their ancestors or whatever the case may be. So I really want to meet people where they're at with their particular needs for the session. So some of it I leave open.
Do you, okay, this will be a weird question, but I want to ask it. So kink, okay. I know that. Is that okay to talk about?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. So kink is magic too, right? It's also blood magic and body magic and skin magic, like it's part of it. And also clearly we have very specific boundaries with our clients. Like it's not a relationship. So, but kink to me isn't necessarily sexual. It can be, but it isn't always. Is there ever a time or ways that you include kinky energy or power dynamics or kink rituals? Like I think about piercing my clients, like not piercings and piercings, right? But like play piercing. I think about that like as part of a ritual, such as what you're describing. And I've definitely like dreamed into something like that as like part of a tattoo ritual. Like, what are your thoughts on this?
I think that's so fascinating. And this is like, it's so funny to find aspects of something that's already taboo and then find such a niche specific corner of that taboo thing that it's taboo inside of the taboo thing. And I think combining the elements of kink and tattooing is as niche as I could imagine that taboo getting,
Uh,
because so much of it, and I think maybe this is also specific to the tattoo culture that I came up in, which is very queer. It's very consent oriented. It's very aware of power dynamics. So if you add that in conjunction with intentional manipulation of power dynamics for kink purposes, like where do you go with it, right? So I think it's a fascinating kind of unexplored territory, which was a really fun part of when I got tattooed by you, when we came in and got those matching tattoos, because I was like, oh, this is the first time the ritual that I'm going through is explicit with the person that is participating and making it happen for me. And being able to like name that was kinky out loud instead of it having like a private meaning for me or whatever was really powerful. So, I mean, it definitely seems like there are ways to go through that with an intention and consent that are aware of, but not exploiting a power dynamic. But it seems really unexplored. Like, what are the ways that you've imagined that looking, like in an official context?
I mean, in the sense of like tattooing you and your partner, who I will not name, but knowing you have a kinky relationship and knowing that person from not really a kink space, but in kink space as well. And it was like really fun for me. I was like, oh, my friend's coming in with like their girl and they're going to do this thing and I'll be a part of it. Like it's really fun. It's just like fun and playful and exciting to me. And like, had like not like it's not a turn on, but it's like a turn on in like a soulful way. It's like these people have this dynamic, they're both really happy about it, and I get to participate in it, and it's intimate. And so that piece is so fun for me. I've done that before, maybe a couple times, not very many times. And I also get that like most people who are in kink relationships, in like power dynamic relationships, are not going to just like some tattoo artist they don't know, probably, for those kinds of
Hopefully, yeah.
tattoos. Or they're doing it and they're not saying it out loud, like you said.
Yeah.
It's not explicit. But I guess besides that, that feels very straightforward to me. You're my friend, you're bringing me your partner, your girl, and I'm doing this thing for you. Like, cool. Just in the sense of like, how could I bring in, for example, play piercing, which to me doesn't feel sexual. It feels ritualistic in a way of like when I've done it the first few times with friends in play space, you're there, you're ready to get pierced, and the person piercing you is saying, okay, breathe in, and when I pierce you, like say your intention, or call in something you want, and then when we're taking the needle out of your skin, you will say out loud or express in some way something you will let go of, release, right? So I've done these types of rituals in play spaces that were, for me, like a spiritual experience and not so much like a sexual experience. Kink has always been more of a soulful way to connect to the body, to the spirit, and to other people, more than like I'm gonna get off on this type of thing.
Totally.
And so, like, for example, play piercing is something I could do with anyone. There are things like beating somebody, flogging somebody, spanking somebody, doing something else to them might feel more like I have to have intimacy with that person. But piercing I could do with almost anyone. And so if somebody would want that experience as part of their ritual, I could imagine being really easily able to provide it. It's just as intimate as tattooing, like it's the same. Like, yes, we're dealing with your blood and your skin, but I'm going to be tattooing you. So it's like the same thing. I don't know if this makes sense.
No, it makes total sense to me. Yeah.
Because I feel like I've run into this thing with like folks who are not as familiar with kink, or for whom kink is very sexual, where if I talked about kink and outside of sexual dynamics, they'd kind of be like, what do you mean? Like, this is how you feel about that person? And I'll be like, no, it's like, I'm like, I don't know how to talk about it.
Well, because I think it's hard because the like outsider perspective on kink is like, oh, you get off on causing people pain. That's the most like dumbed down version of what it is. And as a tattooer, you are really holding that space to try and make a safe and comfortable environment. So to have that cross association of people thinking that, oh, this is like a kinky tattooer means that they're getting off on hurting you, which is like very much not my experience. But that would be like my fear in sort of outing that connection between people if there's not already that inherent understanding of how kink can be separate from sexual arousal, you know?
And I feel like in relation to this conversation, I've heard people have asked me, do you like hurting people? Like people have been like, basically are you a sadist? Like without using that word, because most people aren't using these words. And I'd be like, no, I don't actually, because it's not part of our relationship. Like if I knew they were enjoying it, then I would enjoy it too, because I like making people happy. But do I just in the vacuum enjoy hurting somebody? Like, no.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope.
It is a slippery slope. And then I feel like that question's not very kink informed, you know?
Definitely. Yeah. And then you also like, then you're being asked to sort of like disclose really intimate and personal parts of yourself in a way that is unheard of in other contexts. Like if somebody asked me if I'm a sadist, I'd really clearly be able to be like, absolutely not. I'm a masochist. I got reprimanded by the woman that mentored me for apologizing for hurting my client. So like, it's actually the opposite for me, but like, it's a role I can play on TV, Like I can tap into this space in service of somebody's needs, but like absolutely not. The pain of it is not doing something nice for me, But that's like level 202,
Yeah. And also what pain is to your average layperson is something complex and layered and intricate to somebody who is kinky, right? Like
for sure.
If I'm spanking my partner, I imagine how the warmth and the sting and the pleasure of it like feels at the same time. And then I can tune into how she's feeling. And so like that gives me pleasure, sure, because I can imagine that it feels nice. But like the idea of just like causing someone pain, like for the sake of pain, right? Like I think that's also why like things like cutting are things I cannot imagine, because cutting to me seems like a lot more pain than pleasure. And that's kind of besides the point.
Yeah, I mean, it's also personal the way different people integrate different sensory experiences, And it's also, I mean, like if you do any kind of intentional magic ritual, anything like that, there's like a good chance that you're a really empathetic person, and combining all of these really complex experiences while also having your own energetic boundaries and taking care of yourself. It's just like actually way more to hold than I think most people are thinking of when they come in and get a random flash piece,
For sure. Yeah. And I haven't done a lot of those kinds of tattoos. I've only done those tattoos when I've guest spotted, really. I guess I equate the flash with more walk-in style of work. I don't really draw flash. Maybe it's time because that's what the economy is pointing to. But yeah, like my tattoos tend to be all very ritualistic without really setting it up that way, because people have to wait. I mean, like the people who wait and you do custom work for, like for them, it's deep and important. And when they're there, like they're really ready for it. So yeah, I guess I'm just like back to the kink conversation because I think that's so interesting, and talking to you specifically about it. I would like to draw in more kink specific and like I guess overt dynamics that but that aren't going to be seen as sexual, right? Like just because I'm doing this thing for you and we're calling it this thing, it's not a reason for you to hit on me. It's not a reason for me to hit on you. Like it's not to do with romantic or sexual dynamics.
Right. Or you like the chance of someone being seen as like crossing a boundary, like, because that's the other piece of it,
I'm terrified of that.
Right. Yeah. And like as a young person, like I, was assaulted by a tattooer while getting tattooed when I was 18 and like brand new to it. And so I think that really informs how I try to talk to people about their bodies while they're getting tattooed and try to be aware of that inherent like power dynamic that you really can't get rid of. But sometimes the thing that makes it safe is just naming it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe in saying it really blatantly and out loud that that's the thing that you're trying to attract and that's the type of session that you're trying to do will bring you the people that understand what it is and are trying to have the same kind of experience that you're trying to have. Because it's like you were just saying, like, I think, yeah, definitely the majority of my clients are coming to me with really heavy shit that they're processing through an experience that I'm with them for. And it was a ritual before I called it a ritual and before I set up all of the extra stuff around it.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways, that version of it, the less manicured version of it, is more accessible for some people that are like not familiar with some of the more explicit aspects of it. But sometimes if you just are saying it out loud, then people can say, yes, that's definitely what I want, even if I didn't previously know that that was a thing I could ask for.
Mm-hmm. And that's definitely not a thing people think they can ask for, because we don't speak about power dynamics or intimate things, very much in public or with providers, unless it's like a very specifically somebody who identifies as a sex worker.
Right. And it's so interesting that there is language for that within the context of hiring a sex worker. Like, they've really got this skill set. Maybe we should do like a Skillshare trade between professions to like merge some of the
brilliant
skills.
That is brilliant. Actually, can think of somebody who would probably be a good candidate for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for what it's worth, if anybody is thinking of coming to you for this, I can say my experience with my kink explicit tattoo, you were the perfect person. And I really loved what you brought to it in terms of facilitating that aspect of it.
I appreciate you saying that. That's very kind for you to say. I guess I really like authentic, honest, unexpected dynamics and truths in a space, where it's kind of like with tattoos, like I like for things to not be super linear and to like take a wild turn. I'm like, I love that. Like this is part of being human. So doing something unexpected or unusual or something people don't come to me often for is always exciting.
Definitely. Yeah, that's how you stay in it with inspiration and gratitude, right?
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask you a question earlier when you were talking about the ritual and like what comes to you in the midst of that as you're working with this person. So you have a specific style. You have like a niche style. Do you ever have people who are in that space and then asking for something that you don't usually do?
Not in the ritual space. I feel like I've been really lucky to just have the clients that are very, very open to like just receiving what happens in the session. And I'm trying to really create an environment where they still feel like they can say like, no, I don't like that. Like, even if I feel like I got this information from somewhere from the ether or whatever, I don't want them to feel like they have to get it,
Mm-hmm.
And it has felt like a really collaborative process. But it was really informed by when I was living in Portland, this is the most stereotypical sentence I could possibly say, but when I was living in Portland, I went to witch school. And one of the areas of magic that felt really like I had been doing it my whole life, I just didn't have a name for it, like was making charms for people. And so when I started tattooing, I did a lot of designs that were sort of charm informed. And that's the way that I think of it. So there are like bits and pieces that I can imagine if I were making a physical charm to hand somebody, those are like my personal symbolism that I might bring in, but other people are bringing in, their own components. And my job is to sort of weave that narrative together in a cohesive way. But yeah, so far nobody has come through trying to get a ritual tattoo and then being like, but could you make it like Garfield skin rip kind of
Exactly.
Which is a real tattoo I did, but that was not in a ritual context.
So like stylistically, given that you have such a niche style, will you sometimes go outside of that? Like if somebody's like, I want a rainbow bright like whatever.
Sure. I mean, I think that stuff is fun as long as I feel like technically I can execute it. Some stuff I'm just like, I don't know how to do that. I don't even know how to draw that. But for example, I did tattoo Garfield skin ripping through my friend Leanne's leg. And then behind the skin rip, it was a rainbow flag. And then there was a banner that said, "These colors don't run." And that's not something I would ever tattoo out of my brain. But when Leanne was like, "I need this really specific niche idea," I was like, anything for Leanne, you know?
Right. When like a friend asks you, you're like, yeah, I'll do it for you. So then would you post something like that?
I did post it. Yeah. Cause I thought it was a fucking hilarious tattoo.
Okay.
Cause it's also like a reference to like, I think it's like bumper stickers in the South that are like, "These colors don't run." And then it's like an American flag or like, I don't know, some really bullshit thing. And, we were just trying to have a moment of like, not everyone in the South is a bigot.
Mm-hmm. And like just turning it around on its head. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wonder that though about people who have a very niche style, like who are like, this is what I do. This is, in the scope of this, like kind of a narrow style, like this, I do all these different things. By narrow, I don't mean, not expansive, just a specific way you do line work and shading and all that. Do you do other stuff and not post it? Like, how do you keep your, say, social media looking more linear? It tends to attract more people, more followers.
Sometimes I feel almost like I've backed myself into a corner with the style. Like there are things that I'd like to explore more, but people see a certain thing on your page and then that's the thing that they ask for. And while I would love to tattoo flowers until the day I die, occasionally I'd like to put some color in there. And so I feel really grateful when people do ask for something that's not all over my feed because it gives me a chance to do something new. But like, at the end of the day, if I'm saying no to a request, it's because I just don't think that if I did it, I think you would be able to tell I was faking it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like I've had a few people ask me to like do recreations of some other thing that they saw. And I'm like, it's going to look like a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy. This isn't how I work. And I think that's probably both, a part of the luxury of being some self-taught tattooer that didn't have to like struggle through walk-in shop years, that I just got spoiled in doing my own art. But the other piece of it is like, it does make you less adaptable in these times of, recession. Like I can't just go get a job doing Sailor Jerry pinup style stuff because I don't know how to do it.
I mean, you'd probably learn since you learned this.
I would need some help, but for sure. I mean, there are also days where I'm like, there are artistic visions in my mind that I technically don't know how to execute that I would love to just walk into a shop and pretend that I've never tattooed in my life and try to get an apprenticeship so that I could learn to be like a neo-trad bro. Cause I think that shit's beautiful, but like, I don't know how to do it.
I mean, I've heard people say, online, like if you are self-taught and you don't feel like you have the basic skills, like you could get an apprenticeship or kind of like retrain or work in someone else's shop and like unofficially retrain, right? Like I've thought about it because I also feel like I'm self-taught. Like I don't think my apprenticeship was in any way formal. There was, the person who was supposed to be my teacher was not there very much. And when they were tattooing and not watching me and like not talking to me. So
yeah, I hear that from a lot of people. And it seems so unfortunate because most people that I've talked to had really unfortunate apprenticeship experiences and still ended up kind of having to teach themselves. And yeah, I think it's scary. But sometimes I do think about just like trying to go get an apprenticeship to learn a different way of doing it. Because I certainly don't think mine is the best way. It's just the one I've come up with,
And it's worked for you. So you're doing it. I mean, that makes sense. Like same for me.
Totally.
And I have over time just kind of been like, okay, I'm going to approach like somebody, I did a traditional back piece and it was like hard, but also really fun. And I think he's really happy with it. And I was like, I would do more of this, but because it's not on my feed, people don't come for it. But when they do, like I get excited about it and I'll teach myself to do more of it for sure.
Totally. Yeah. The way I sort of like sneak it in every now and then is if I'm interested in exploring something that's not all over my feed, I'll just draw something in that style and then post it and see if anybody wants it. And it'll give me a chance to sort of play around with new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But now I feel like the internet doesn't show any of my stuff to anyone, so it kind of doesn't matter anymore.
So speaking of the internet and it showing your stuff to people, which it doesn't, you're right. How did you build your following? I mean, for a tattooer who's not been tattooing that long, you have a good following.
Yeah. I mean, I think I was just I think I just lucked out in the time and the place that I started tattooing. And, I am in the South, and my primary clientele are like queer and trans younger people. And so there's not a ton of us doing that kind of experience. And in addition to that, when I started tattooing, there was not very many people doing fine line work at all in all of North Carolina, and especially not like fine line botanical stuff the way that I tend to focus on. So I feel like it was just kind of the luck of that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first started out, I think I was a lot more boisterous and personable on the internet. I'm a little tired and older now, and so I don't put as much of my self personality forward. But the internet is a terrible game that you can play, and if you're like willing to like put on a cute outfit and talk to the camera, people see what you're doing more. But it made me feel bad in my spirit because I was like, I don't know, could you just look at my art? That's actually the thing I'm trying to show you. I'm not trying to be like a personality.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely see less engagement the less of myself I'm trying to put on the internet. But also, people are fucking insane. I had people like getting in my DMs being like, who's your sperm donor? And I'm like, that's creepy. Like, I don't even know you. So like, the more of yourself you put on the internet, the more of yourself you're kind of like vulnerable with. And at the end of the day, I was like, I'm just trying to draw tattoos for you. Like, I'll get vulnerable in your session once we like know each other, but you don't deserve these parts of me just because you saw them on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a little creeped out. And I think as a result, like, I spend less time being there on the internet.
Yeah, and the internet's not really rewarding anyway. Like, it just feels like, yeah, everyone is putting in a lot of effort. People who are doing well putting in lots of effort to make the stuff that they're putting out, and it's not energy that I have.
It's also like a whole full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, not only do you have to be a tattooer and do the tattoos and do the drawings for the tattoos and the emails for the tattoos, but now you also have to be a videographer and an editor and, have this whole other job.
So what happens if tattoo industry dies? What are you going to do?
Well, like I said, I'm
as a
still
thought
a massage
experiment.
What's that?
As a thought experiment, more than like reality, because I don't think it's going to happen. But like,
sure,
let's dream about it.
Well, I am still a massage therapist, and so 2 days a week I do pediatric body work. And as much as that's like a fallback in case the tattoo industry disappears for me, it's also just that as a neurodivergent person, I need novelty to be able to stay interested and to stay good at what I'm doing. And so being able to sort of bounce back and forth between two really different styles of using my brain helps me stay sharper in both of them. Mm-hmm. So I can still do pediatric body work. I guess
pediatric, do you mean for kids?
Yeah, I do mostly. I would say like 3 months and under is my main population that I work with.
Like babies,
newborns.
Wild. That's wild. Yeah.
But it's really fun, and they're so receptive and like open.
I imagine so. I'm afraid of babies, so I could never do it. But
like, you're afraid of like dropping them or something?
I think the idea of dealing with their bodies is terrifying because they are so they can't communicate like in a adult way. Like, that's comfortable, that's uncomfortable, that hurts. Like, I know they'll cry and they'll probably move and stuff. Like, I know they communicate, but it feels so alien to me, the idea of like, like
learning the language.
Yeah, like as a person who parented a kid for a time, my stepson was 4 when I met him. And so
Had
like
some
toddler,
language.
it's what?
He had some language.
So much language and like so much expression, attitude, and all that. So like at 4, when he first met me, he was like, I do not care to know you at all. And it took us a while to get to a place where he like trusted me enough to like interact with me and cry with me and like play with me and all the stuff. It was beautiful and hard. But 4, like 3, 4 feels like the age I can start to like deal with kids at.
Mm-hmm. I
Like
bet
younger is so scary.
if you threw yourself into it, I bet you'd be better at it than you're giving yourself credit for, because you deal with people's nonverbal
Mm.
communication all day, every day. Like you're
Yeah.
constantly reading somebody's cues about whether they need a water break or if they're about to tap out, or like you're doing the same thing. Babies are not any different. They're just doing it without words, but they
Yeah.
still have that whole system of language in their bodies, and that's what I'm reading when I'm working with them.
That makes complete sense. And I definitely, it's like we're not all good at the same things. And I love the fact that this is like a passion for you. And also you're a parent and you're going to be a parent again. And like this is your thing. I can see how amazing you are as like a nurturing figure in like a person's life,
And you're like, I still don't want to hang out with babies.
I mean, it's like if it's like my dear friend's baby, it's like when I
Yeah,
imagine the folks that are around me now, especially the younger folks that I feel nurturing towards, that I feel like I'm their queer uncle or their like grandpa in case of Sailor. If like one of them got pregnant, had a baby, I would totally be there for them. I'd hold
sure.
the baby, I'd babysit the baby, I would feed it, I would stay up night with it, whatever. Like I would do the things as like a good grandparent would.
Yeah,
But I definitely am like was happy to skip like the parent part of like having the little baby of mine, like starting at 4 and on, and then now having people in their 20s be like my children. This is I feel good about this. This is
you've got
good.
your niche.
Yeah, exactly. I have my
Yeah,
niche of parenting.
yeah. So I guess my fallback is that particular niche of mine. But
Okay.
lately, because of the neurodivergence, I have to like quit my career and get a new one every 6 years. And lately, I've been like, what if I just quit all of it and go become a nail tech?
Okay.
And like, you get to do all of the art, but none of it is permanent, and you can just like do it over again if they don't like it.
It's just that I feel like you'd have to work so much to make money to live on.
Or, I don't know, like a full set's like $150.
Hmm. You spend like what, an hour on it?
Yeah, maybe an hour.
See, I don't know anything about it because I don't do nails. I don't get nails. Have you seen the show Claws?
I love the show Claws. Yeah.
Okay. It's very inspiring. Like watching that show, I'm like, I could be like a gangster nail tech. Okay, I
You
could see
could.
it.
Yeah. You could
Like,
launder a bunch of money while you like paint really cool designs on nails.
right, there was like a Russian mafia person.
Yeah.
It's part of it. And like the one that's Butch, I was like, wow, this is so great.
Wow. Now I want to revisit that show.
I like loved the show for a while, and then I was like, this is getting tedious. Like there's too many different mafias. Poor the main character, like she's so stressed out. I just like can't watch her be that stressed out anymore,
Totally. You just want something good to happen to her finally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like it just keeps getting shit and shit and shit. And I'm just like, she's the best and she's really suffering here and I can't watch this anymore.
Yeah, that's real.
Yeah. What was your name of
I
the
go
show?
back and forth with Grey's Anatomy in that same way. Like I can watch it for like a month and then I'm like, this is too much misfortune.
Mm.
I need to take a break.
Hmm. Yeah. Watching shows where it's just like bad shit keeps happening is, yeah. Bad shit keeps happening out there in the world.
There's already enough bad shit. I don't need to watch entertainment about bad shit.
Yeah. For real. Do you have a show recommendation for me and the listeners?
Um,
What's your like favorite thing that's comfort or just something you really liked in the last couple of years?
in true neurodivergent fashion, I just keep rewatching the X-Files every time I
Okay.
need
Excellent.
to feel comfortable. That's my like safe zone. It's just like me and Dana Scully forever.
Okay. That's very, very retro classic of you.
Yeah, it's never going to be a new one because I was raised Pentecostal, so I wasn't allowed to have TV when I was young. So
Mm.
everything is new to me.
Mm.
So I didn't get the X-Files like in the 90s when everyone else did. I got it a couple of years ago.
Got it. But it like you're talking about like the retro 90s style of it, right? That there's no remake. It's just that old.
No, yeah, it's just the
Okay.
original one. I just watched it for the first time
Yeah.
like some years back, and now I just
Cool.
keep rewatching it.
That's great. I never watched it because I didn't come here to this country till I was 12, and then I was watching Saved by the Bell
There you go.
reruns. Yeah.
Yeah. Or Buffy. I feel like Buffy is my other one. Last night I saw this new horror movie with a friend of mine, and I left it thinking about how many like references to feminism were interlaid into some of the visuals, and then I was like, this could be a whole dissertation. And then I thought about what it would be on my drive home. That would
Oh,
be a
the
fun way
dissertation
to
would
read.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the movie?
It was the new Omen movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you watch, speaking of horror, did you watch Love Lies Bleeding?
That was the one with, which one was that? That was the
That
one
was
with
the new,
Kristen Stewart?
yeah.
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did you
I
consider that?
absolutely loved it.
I was sure you did. It
Yeah.
seems like something up your alley. I had no idea what I was walking into. I completely didn't know it would be like that. Like I
You
thought it was
saw it
a.
too.
I saw it early on when it first came out, just being like, oh, it's like a working class lesbian love story about
Boy,
like
were you wrong,
fit
huh?
girls. Yes, I was.
Were you unhappy or were you pleased?
I was freaked out, honestly. I think even more so because my partner sitting next to me kept being like, "Why did you bring me here? Like, what?
Yeah.
Why are we here? Like, I would not have come if I knew." And I was like, "I didn't know either." And then I got really defensive because I didn't know either, and I felt like responsible for like how she felt. So
That must have felt awful. I also didn't know what the movie was about when I went into it. Somebody described it to me as Lesbian Fight Club, and I was like, obviously I'm in, but that's not what that movie is at all.
no.
Yeah, I feel like we all needed more information going in, but I was really pleased with my outcome, and I'm sorry you weren't.
Well, most people who I've talked about it loved it the way you did, and wanted to see it again. I think the first murder scene what I was fine with, even though it was graphic and intense. Like I don't mind cool special effects where there's like pieces of skull missing.
Yeah,
Like that I was fine with. And then as like it got further
yeah.
progressively more gruesome and bloody and intense, that's where I was like, do we not get a break? Like there's not going to be like just something else like nice happening.
No, they were really not giving you anything
No,
nice in that one.
no, they weren't. But like the end when they're skipping through the fields as like unicorns and there's like rainbows. I was like, okay, give us some camp. I'll take some camp.
Yeah. I really appreciated some of the breaks for surrealist weirdness that happened in
Yeah.
it. I thought it was really visually beautiful also. If I'm like not enjoying a movie, sometimes I'll just sort of zone in on like the color palette or the camera angles or whatever, and that'll usually get me through to the end at least.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was a
Like a
gruesome
true
movie, and I
artist.
did not know that that was about to happen.
Mm-hmm. If you do want lesbian Fight Club, there's a movie on. I'll remember what it's called now. And I'll talk to you about it. But there's a teenage movie online that's literally lesbian Fight Club. It's these two teenage girls in high school decide that they will start having Fight Club as a
Whoa.
way to get closer to their crushes, their female crushes. It's called Bottoms.
Bottoms. Okay.
Yeah. And it's quite literally that. Teenage lesbian Fight Club. There's
That
lots of
is so
fighting
cute.
and people hitting each other. And it's like pretty done in like a very juicy way where there's lots of sound effects and
Wow.
bloody noses and stuff.
Well, maybe I'll take a break from the X-Files tonight.
I think you would enjoy it. I think you actually would really enjoy it.
Yeah.
So last question I ask my guests is, what is something small that's been making you happy lately?
So it's very spring in North Carolina right now, and my yard is full of wild strawberries. Like I've never seen so many in my whole life. And this morning, my son discovered them, and so we spent a good chunk of this morning just gathering wild strawberries and eating them, and it was it's the most joy I've felt in weeks. I think definitely like the spring coming, my child playing in the yard, all of that is feeling like big joy.
Wild strawberry flavor is one of my like most favorite tastes in the world. It's so
Really?
specific. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a specific thing. It doesn't, to me, it doesn't taste like strawberry, but there's something very special about it. It's
It's
very
almost kind of
magical.
ephemeral, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah, it's not like a hit you in the face flavor.
No, but it's a very specific flavor.
Totally. Yeah, well, you should come over to my yard because they are going off right now.
Okay, I'm on my way. Thank you. Thanks for
Yeah,
coming on the podcast. It was
thanks for
so
having
kind of
me.
you to be down and also to be like last minute. And I'm like, how about tomorrow? And you're like, yeah, okay.
Sure.